What's up, Bill?
How you doing?
How you feeling?
I can't believe we're down here in Tribeca because we certainly can't afford to live here.
No, we definitely can't afford to live here. But, well, the palatial estates was beautiful, too. But we had to make a move, man. We're moving up to the big time now.
Well, we're in the palatial dungeons of Tribeca.
We're in a brownstone here in Tribeca. But now we got a producer. We got an engineer.
Holy shit.
And we have the best guest. You
believe the guest we got?
A legend with the NYPD, law enforcement all over the world. Without further ado, let's welcome Chief Louis Anemone.
Hey, good morning, guys. Good to be here.
Thanks for coming in, man.
Oh, my pleasure. You know that.
Yeah, Mark, the same thing. The first thing I said when I saw him, I said, "What happened to the tan?" Because he always has a perpetual tan.
No, you still got some color.
A little bit,
Yeah.
but not a lot, though.
Yeah.
You look good.
Yeah, and I'll look better in January. 3 weeks in Florida.
Is that what you do?
Yeah.
You ever what's that called? Snow bunny?
Snowbird.
Snow bunny.
So that's what you do? You go down just 3 weeks? Or you go
3
down for
weeks. That's it. Yeah.
What part of Florida?
Singer Island. It's on the East Coast.
Yeah, that's top secret, you know.
I can't get you any closer than that.
Yeah,
Singer Island.
That's a good plan, man. That's a good plan. So for those of our listeners who haven't had the honor and the pleasure to know, aren't in New York City, don't really know much about the NYPD. They're learning it through us. But our guest, Louis Anemone, 34 years with the NYPD?
34 and a half years.
With the NYPD.
Yep.
And at the end, it was 4 years, 7 months as chief of department.
Oh, yeah.
That's
right.
the highest ranking.
The highest ranking uniform member of the department.
That's an amazing achievement.
But continue when you consider I started as a police trainee.
A police trainee, right? In the 60s, right?
Yeah.
What
1964, December.
What were you, 18 years old?
Yeah. That's right.
Wow.
And you came on at 20?
I came on at 21 back
21?
then.
Okay.
Yeah. They wanted a more mature officer, so the age was 21.
In your mind, as a young teenager right there, getting on as a trainee, and then once you finally got on, you got sworn in. Did you ever? When did you come to your realization that maybe I can go up through the ranks here? Maybe I can actually be a big boss on this job.
Well, it wasn't when I was a trainee. I was a little bit of a cut up, and I got a little trouble here and there
Where'd
along
you grow
the way. In the Marlboro projects
in Brooklyn, right?
Yeah. I'm a project rat.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you come from a long line of sanitation workers.
This is true. This is very true. So there's a little bit of a story there.
Go ahead.
All right.
We got nothing but time.
So Grandpa
That's why
Louis.
you're here.
Grandpa Louis.
You were named after Grandpa Louis.
I'm named after
okay.
Grandpa Louis. Was a foreman in sanitation in Coney Island. His brother worked for him there in Coney Island. His 3 sons worked for him there in Coney Island in the sanitation department. My father left to become a correction officer.
Why?
Too much of Louis the Whip, they called him.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, he was a tough boss, and he leaned a little harder on my father. He was the oldest of the sons. So Dad.
And this sanitation, this is like a cartel or something? You gotta know somebody to get in there?
Oh yeah.
Let
me tell you something. We had to know someone to get into the projects.
Oh yeah. Back then it was a lottery, right?
Yeah.
It's still a lottery now.
Yeah.
Project Kid makes good, though. Look
Yeah. Marlboro Projects, man. Yeah. So you didn't want to go into sanitation, huh?
No. As a matter of fact, though, my grandfather told me.
But your family wasn't really doing nothing, right?
No. With civil service.
Just send them out, right?
Yeah. So my grandfather told me, hey, I don't think you're college material, but there's a test for this police trainee thing. He used to read the Chief, the civil service newsletter, religiously every week. He says, I see there's a test, you got to go out to Jamaica, Queens. So I went, I took the test, and, the rest, as they say, is history.
Wow.
Wait, did you have any fascination with police, or?
None at all at the time. I used to spend my time running
from the
police. Back in the day.
And the Marlboro Projects, that's what part of Brooklyn is that
in? So that's Bath Beach, Gravesend border.
Okay.
That's the end of Brooklyn.
Yeah. One stop from the terminal. One stop from
You ever
Coney
go
Island.
back and visit the Marlboro Houses?
Yeah, well, I go back to visit not so much the houses as the
Has it changed any?
L&B, Spumoni Garden, and open air
Garden,
pizzeria.
Oh, that's
we go back every year. Yeah.
Spumoni Garden. I've
The
been
owner
there.
got killed with that.
They got
Yeah,
the
that's right.
Spumoni Gardens has the squares, right?
Yeah, square Sicilian
yeah, I love
pizza.
those.
So when they see you walking up, do all the wise guys start walking out,
No,
running out of the place?
Nobody knows me. Nobody knows me. I'm a quiet guy. You know.
You were an image though in the uniform. I just had a picture of that in my head. You know, I was a Queens Marine.
Oh, task force.
Yeah.
Yeah, Queen's Task Force.
Back in the day, right? If you had any size to you,
Yeah.
I'm 6'4", 250. You know, if you put in for it, you might get to the task force, which is specialized in crowd control and crowd disbursement and protests, any type of civil unrest. And when I got into there, it was like 1993. I think that you were just coming in to head that.
Just
To head that
control?
part.
So in 1993, the commissioner at the time promoted me to deputy chief. And if you remember, this was after the Crown Heights riots in 91, after the Washington Heights riots in 92. So my job then was to create a disorder control unit that would train members of the patrol force, change our policies, change our procedures, get some equipment, and then train the executives in.
Where did you
what
get
the
these
hell to
ideas
do.
from?
From all over. I read every book on the subject. I read every critique from L.A. They had Rodney King.
Yeah.
Dallas had a couple of bad experiences. There were a couple up in, I think, Canada as well.
Was anybody doing anything like that?
Nobody. We were. But, I mean, we did it as a reaction because the governor at the time instituted a panel to examine, what happened in Crown Heights, what was going right, what was wrong.
But it was important to study that because
Yeah.
even like the Rodney King thing, letting trucks go into the riot zone, like that guy Reginald
Yeah.
Denny got
Yeah.
his head kicked in. I mean, you would think that would be common sense, but it obviously wasn't because they let people do that, right?
So you find out very early, right? In police work, I'm sure we all have the same. Common sense isn't that common.
Yeah.
So
That's true.
For those of you who don't, make the civilian fan a little aware. So what happens is you have police precincts, and they cover a certain area, and they basically are responsible for handling the radio runs, emergency calls, 911 calls that come over. And then, if, God forbid, something happens where you're going to, like there's a riot, a protest, whatever, there's a large group of people. Maybe it's a nightclub. We used to have a big problem with this place, Trafalgar Square in Jamaica. Wherever there's a large group of people that are hanging out, we have to, and you want to disperse them, or you got to babysit them, then you're not going to be able to use the precinct personnel because then they're going to go into backlog. They're not going to be able to handle a 911 call. So every borough, and then eventually each borough was split into north and south, had a task force. And those cops, when you got there, we usually, when I was in Queens, everybody was 6 feet or better. They either knew martial arts, they can box, they were physically fit, bodybuilding, whatever, power lifters. And your job was basically, you drove around, you assisted with patrol, but you waited until something happened, and then you got what's called mobilized.
there you go.
You listened to the radio. If there's some type of civil unrest, you got mobilized, and you went to that particular area, and you put the precinct personnel back so they can answer the radio, and now it was your charge to either disperse the crowd or sit with them while they act up, and it made it a lot easier when we started actually practicing doing these type of things like lines and wedges. We looked professional doing it. It was intimidating if you were a crowd and you were all of a sudden these giant guys get out of the vans and they got hats and hat by hat we mean helmets, the nightsticks.
And shields.
Yeah, shield. And you formed a line, and you were organized, and you marched
did it
down
with
there.
military precision.
Right, absolutely.
Right?
Who was the governor at that time? Because you mentioned the governor.
Oh, yeah, it was Mario Cuomo.
Okay.
Father of the current.
Okay, so Mario Cuomo had got you guys together, and all the bigwigs. And
He didn't get us together. He said he was having a committee, I guess it was a commission, to study what went wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So the police commissioner at the time was Kelly.
tell us a little bit about Crown Heights.
All right. So, okay. So I was in the Bronx at the time. I was a full inspector. I was the commander of the 9th Division. I was working 10 to 6s, I think, for those first few days of the riots. So I'm going home after work, watching the TV news at 6 o'clock, at 11 o'clock, watching cops do nothing. Now, this is before I'm the disorder control guy. I'm just an ordinary inspector.
And refresh my memory, Crown Heights, it initiated because...
Gavin Cato was run over?
Yeah, he was...
It was a
8-year-old boy was struck by a car that was escorting a rabbi from Crown Heights.
Okay.
The boy died, and now the neighborhood erupted.
Well, they erupted too. Wasn't there an incident where one of their ambulances, Hadzola, showed up and took the driver away and didn't take to help the boy?
That's what
Same
was
incident.
reported at the time.
Yeah.
That's absolutely correct.
All right. So then that really upset the community because an ambulance showed up, and who knows the difference between a regular ambulance or Hadzola. Hadzola happens to be ambulances that basically are there for the Jewish population.
That's true.
Yeah. So.
But they will help.
They will. Yeah. Well,
they will help
especially
anyone
after
if
that
they happen
incident.
to be there.
The boy wound up still staying at the scene.
Yeah.
And then that started. People got pissed.
So that night, Yankel Rosenbaum was stabbed to death.
So as a retaliation, because they felt like the little boy was left there, and nobody helped him, then that community took up in arms and they found Yankel Rosenbaum, who's a Hasidic Jew, and they stabbed him. And that boy lived in that area.
Yeah, he lived in the neighborhood. I'm pretty sure that the city ambulances responded immediately after. Everyone did everything they could for that boy. There was no way Gavin Cato was going to survive.
All right, and then the Yankel Rosenbaum gets stabbed.
Right. So the neighborhood now becomes, breaking windows, looting stores, stabbing Yankel Rosenbaum.
It's an interesting neighborhood because that neighborhood right there, it's very diverse, isn't it?
Yeah. You have Hasidics living side by side with minorities, right? And they've lived there for years. It's not like this is a new
And what
feature.
was wrong with the NYPD response to that? Well, you said no one was doing anything. How?
Well, that's
could
exactly.
you tell us about that?
So, 3 days of this. Now, I'm watching this every night at home, getting more and more aggravated, watching.
Because you're in the Bronx.
Yeah, I'm in the Bronx. I'm waiting for something to happen. The last night that I watched at home, there were cops from the Bronx, from the 4-8 precinct, which is where my office was, who was shot by a rioter with a shotgun. 6 or 7 cops shot, and still nothing was done.
Just so our audience understands.
Who was the mayor, Dinkins?
Mayor Dinkins, Lee Brown was the commissioner.
When you say the cops from the Bronx are getting shot in Brooklyn, that's because they need cops, and you're getting pulled from other precincts to go over there.
Every precinct in the city was sending cops to Crown Heights, but the leadership at the time wasn't doing anything with them. They had no mission there. They were standing around, letting people violate the law, threaten others,
So, Chief,
cause
was that,
injury and damage.
But that feeling there that they were doing nothing, which they weren't doing anything, was that because an unwritten thing they felt that they wouldn't be backed up?
No. Back then, the issue was that the mayor was believed to have told the commissioner, Lee Brown, let them vent. And they vented for 3 days and nights until they finally threw garbage at the mayor and bottles and bricks at the mayor and the police commissioner when they visited high school.
Right.
Then the mayor flipped his script. Then he wanted it done.
It's time to take Crown Heights back.
So they removed the entire...
So
They took the entire leadership structure in Brooklyn South out, and they brought guys like me in from throughout the
They
rest
must
of
have
the
been
city.
pissed when they saw you coming in from the Bronx.
They
Going,
weren't,
hey, yo.
yeah, they weren't even in the building. They had them in a Parks Department building over by the
man.
parade grounds, by I guess it's Ocean Avenue, in
who are
Brooklyn.
you talking about? Wasn't in the building.
The bosses.
The bosses,
The
the
new guys
assistant
coming
chief,
over?
the deputy chiefs,
new
the
guys coming
inspectors.
over. They gave you-
No. The guys who worked there every day, they took them all out
Oh, they made him leave.
for doing nothing.
Uh-huh.
And then they brought some of us in.
Were you an inspector at the time? Or a deputy?
Inspector.
Imagine that they bring an inspector in let this inspector take over this riot because the guys, chiefs, aren't doing their job.
But you must have had a
They must not have been
reputation
happy.
already by then.
Well, I hope I did. You know, as being a street cop, as being a guy who could handle himself and know
But
what
as far
to
as
tell
with disorder
cops to do.
control, you must have, some higher ups must have known that you had at least a little bit of knowledge about this, that you could actually put a plan together.
So the chief of patrol at the time was Mario Salvaggi. So I knew him from the Bronx. He knew me well. He addressed a number of us in the 6-7 precinct, which is the borough headquarters, and he told us tonight, it ends. The mayor wants it to end tonight.
Wow, that's cool, man. I like that for a scene in a movie. Tonight it ends.
And I did my piece. I had 250 cops.
What was your plan
5
to take it back,
captains.
though? What was your plan?
So it was very simple, for me, just getting there, and they sent me to President and Utica, the epicenter of where the accident was, where all the violence was, where it was all starting. And I just told my captains and the cops, listen, we're going to set the rules for every group that starts to walk through the neighborhood. We're going to tell them what they can and can't do.
So how many people did you have to beat with that nightstick before they listened to you?
Well, I think the cops that were working with me for that night made maybe 33 or 34 arrests, right? Because every time the group left and they started getting crazy, we stopped them. We grabbed the ringleaders, put them under arrest, and we did that 3 or 4 times during the night. That was the last night that they were actually doing anything criminal.
Wow.
That's all it took.
The message gets out
That's all it
fast.
took.
Right? It gets out fast.
And back then, you got arrested. You were going through the system. It's not like now where they're going to try to no bail.
No bail, no jail, no arrest. I don't know what's next, Mark.
So then, after Crown Heights, now you straighten that situation out. You go back to after the Crown Heights. Then you had Washington Heights after that.
Right.
Washington Heights, we had Michael O'Keefe.
Yeah.
He happened to be the police officer who killed Kiko Garcia. We had him on the show. He told us the whole story.
He was
about
great.
it.
Yeah.
He was
That was a
great.
great episode.
Good cop, good detective.
Yep.
But that was another 3-day ride, overturning police cars up there, setting stuff on fire, and that was over a neighborhood drug dealer that was killed.
Yeah, Kiko.
So now you know all about. Now you have this reputation of actually putting your ideas into effect. It worked in Crown Heights. Now you're flying over to Washington Heights. Was there any differences between those two situations?
So the difference in Washington Heights was, number one, the cop was involved. There was a police action.
okay.
This wasn't the Hasidic
Now it's
convoy.
against the police.
Now it's against the police, and it was led by the drug dealers. Kiko was a bad guy. They knew he was one of theirs. They just wanted to, cause some. And you had a city councilman at the time, Guillermo Linares, led these demonstrations up there in the street, and apparently, whoever was working there was hands off, or that he was a councilman. So they backed up. They let him lead this mob.
Well, it took a while for the truth to get out, though, right?
Oh yeah,
That was
always
the big
does.
problem. Yeah.
He was. I think he was indicted.
Yes. Yeah.
Mike.
Yeah.
What's the morale like on the department when something like this happens, especially when there's a cop involved?
Well, you're looking for the leadership of the department to back the police. We are looking for the mayor and his people to back the police. And we're looking for the media to give us a fair shot. And we're looking for the communities that we're policing to support us. Everyone knew who Kiko Garcia was. Right. There shouldn't have been any tears shed for him. And the mayor certainly shouldn't have paid for his funeral, send the body back to the DR.
Right.
That's something you never forget. So you go up there and you would throw. Well, once Washington Heights, the riots happened over there. I would imagine were you still in the Bronx? Right, you were still in the Bronx.
No, I was the executive officer in the Special Operations Division.
So now you're in 1PP.
No, Flushing Meadow Park.
All right, so you're in Flushing Meadow Park. You hear about the what's going on in Washington Heights. I imagine you go to the phone booth, you throw the cape on, you fly over there, mess everybody.
Now he had all these toys at his disposal
slap
too
everybody
from
around.
SOD.
Oh my
Helicopters, boats. He had it all.
So I'm just trying to get to the evolution of disorder control here. So now when you get up there, that was 3 days again. Like
Yeah.
now, but why does it take 3 days? Are you letting them vent again, or?
Well, they surely were. They surely were letting them vent.
But they were making arrests in this situation the first day.
You know, there were a couple of arrests. There was no organized police response. You know, this whole, and you were a task force member. You got to have a plan. The cops have got to know that the leader is there on the street with them. Here's what we're going to do, and then they follow it through.
I was in the academy 3 days when that happened.
Wow.
And I remember they said we're going to mobilize us. I'm like, and do what? We don't even know how to do anything. What are we going to do up there?
Bring your star card. Yet. That's all that's important.
Yeah. So there was a theory, and I'm sure you guys are going to remember this, the Scarecrow Theory. Just put enough
stand there around,
put enough people out there in uniform, they'll scare people. But up in the Heights, both cases, they don't scare easy.
No.
These are street guys. They know what they're doing. They don't
Chief,
scare.
let me ask you something. With all of this disorder control training and all the things you're talking about, can you draw any parallels now to today? What's actually happening today? Cops getting attacked and all of that stuff and not responding.
So I haven't seen any large scale issue except for the other night. I think the other night in Brooklyn was the first one. I'm talking about the Barclays Center incident.
Right. Okay. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Barclays
Where
Center.
they all jumped over the turnstile.
You know, the sign, fuck the police, and all this shit and graffiti.
Are you talking
in
about
cars.
the little demonstration that they had?
Little
there
was over 1,000 people.
Oh, really? Okay.
Mark, over 1,000 people. So when you say drawing,
Parallels.
Yeah, but they want to get on the train for free, right?
What's so bad about that?
Isn't the train free right now anyway?
I've got to learn to be more accommodating and understanding.
Jeez.
Yeah. So that's the today.
The
That was
parallel,
the first parallel now that I'm looking at, and I'm looking for the tactics that we taught, the mobilizations that we.
Oh, they're gone.
They're
gone with the
the
wind.
leadership out on the street.
It's not
Stop
They
it.
don't even want you to wear your helmet now unless you are authorized to put it on.
Yeah.
You're going into an area because, God forbid, somebody should get offended or scared that you're wearing a helmet.
Meanwhile, it's a defensive piece of equipment.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt anyone.
No.
You wearing a helmet, it protects your vital, or one of your vital organs there, right?
Well, Bill brought up an interesting point. He talked about coming around to where we are now. Let's take one step back because I have this theory about Occupy Wall Street and how it changed the way it might have screwed everything up, because back then protest and civil unrest usually contained in a certain area. Occupy Wall Street, they started moving around these roving bands, and now it became, I would imagine, a little bit more difficult to keep these groups on the wraps.
Is that a question mark?
Yeah.
Yeah, come on. Roving bands we've had from the March of Dimes Mugathon in the 80s.
You worked that.
Huh? Come on,
What was
Billy,
that?
you were there.
Yeah.
What was that, the Mugathon?
The Mugathon, they
Mugathon.
called it. Yeah.
What was it?
You don't remember?
No.
All these nice little
Manhattan-
kids marching, and the thugs
Manhattan
came to
makes
rob
it,
them.
Brooklyn
Takes
takes
it,
it.
yeah.
I came out in 92.
That's right. Yeah, that was the chant. That's right.
So, we've had roving bands, and we know how to handle roving bands. What you sometimes don't see, and this is the sin of what's happening maybe today, is our police leaders who are out there on the street don't have the intestinal fortitude or the desire.
You could say balls, Chief.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. And it might be, going back to one of your questions, that they may feel there is no backup for them. But, I don't see that, though, as an excuse. We take the oath. We all took the oath. Go out there and do your job.
So when they
Let
stand
the
there in
chips
one
fall where
PP,
they may.
when they stand there in one PP and say, you have our backing, but the cops see no evidence of it,
Well, it's,
yeah,
that's a
problem.
that's a tough thing. But you have
the
people
evidence
that
comes through with Pantaleo, for example. That's where a situation where you had the opportunity to step up and and have the back of that police officer, and that's not what happened at all. So now you're left with a situation where do they really have our backs? How many times can you say you have our back, but you don't really, when it push comes to shove, you don't have our back? That's important to know, because most of these cops, they're not only scared of the civilians or the people that they're sworn to protect, but they're scared of getting caught on tape doing something that's questionable. Like we were talking about, it's not the incident that happened. It's an incident that happened in the train station, but I don't think it's related to the demonstration from the other day,
Right.
where there's a melee on the platform.
That's at the Metro Tech station.
And now they look to launch that
cop
kid
threw
because
some right hand. That was nice. I want that guy in my anti-crime team. I want, and now he got transferred. What
Did he?
message does that send?
transferred.
Yeah, he got transferred. Excellent, right?
I wasn't
That kid
aware of
deserved
that.
to get knocked out. They're fighting with the police.
Yeah.
I mean that's really in the training manual. They teach you how to
No,
throw
but then
punches. in
Eric
the
Adams,
academy.
who's running for mayor, he didn't like what happened. That guy was just a conscientious objector on this job. I don't think he ever did police work. We say stuff like that on this job, on this show. Eric Adams, you want to come on and deny that you're a conscientious objector?
Well, I'm just curious to know what what are you supposed to do if you're a cop on this job right now, and not only do you not think the job doesn't have your back, but they're treating you like crap. And then again, also too, hasn't it? You got to toughen up a little bit though.
Oh, now you're coming around to my way of thinking.
When I go to the academy, I worked there as an actor. Every recruit gets a water bottle with their name on it. I'm not even kidding, man. When they go for the run, they're all carrying their water. They're all carrying their bottles of water.
Oh God!
We used to have a line to take sips of water out of the dirty water out of
In Crown Heights, I had them drinking hydrant water.
Yeah, why
you
not?
forget
Old
it was
school.
August.
That's why they took
Yeah.
it. That's why they took the Heights back.
Yeah.
They drank that New York City hydrant water.
Oh, can I get a sip from your hose? Remember that? You used to walk down the street. Excuse me, miss, can I get a sip from your hose? Oh, the spigot that you used to turn on and just stick your face in it there? Playing ball
But look,
all day.
all their training is reduction of force training, and which
De-escalation.
de-escalation, de-escalation
So
training.
it's good, but so I hit the desk.
No, you were doing
It's
good.
all right.
man.
Oh,
So you had
okay.
20
That's
minutes.
good.
You had
All
20
right.
minutes in. You only did it once.
All right. So, getting back to the point, refresh my recollection.
De-escalation training.
De-escalation. All right. So it's great. It's a good idea. We love it. Back in the day, we talked about verbal judo.
Right.
It's kind of along the same lines. Giving a cop an option where he doesn't necessarily have to use force. The only issue with all of this stuff is the guys on the other side haven't attended the same training.
Right.
Oh,
The
yeah.
guys you bump into in the street, they don't know their lines.
So we gotta
They
send
don't
them
know
to
what they're
training.
supposed to do. They don't, and it's really simple, right?
We got to send them
Say,
a notification
yes,
so they go to
officer.
training.
Yeah. Yes, officer. Anything you say, officer. Sorry, officer. I'm on my way. I'll
What
step
teaches
off
them
now,
really quick?
officer.
A Coca-Cola. That's
Yeah.
They don't have them anymore. They have those stupid asps.
Yeah, let me ask you a
So
question.
there are no
No,
nightsticks
no,
anymore?
no.
What
asp
happened?
it
Were
is.
you still on the job when they gave us those freaking PR-24s?
Yeah, I was a.
What the hell was
lieutenant or
that?
something, yeah.
It was like, first of all, it's a martial arts instrument.
Yes,
If you don't
yeah.
know, it's got a regular, looks like a nightstick, and then there's like a
handle.
knob, a handle, and then a
handle.
knob at the end of it.
Yeah.
And basically, it's a kendo martial arts thing where to get proficient in it, you probably have to train with it for a couple of years. And we got like 3 hours of training. Then they give you this thing. It always sat in the patrol car because nobody knew how to use it.
Yeah, it's so true.
You were a big proponent of mace. You wanted guys to go through 2 or 3 cans a month.
Mace, loved it. I loved the mace.
Except that works on us better than the
Yeah.
perps.
So the pepper spray, though.
So the first time I used, like an industrial size supply
Oh, let me hear
of
about
mace
this.
was the Staten Island riots. So that was in 1994. I was chief of patrol, and I had a nice quart size.
Oh, I remember those. Yeah.
Quart size, because
Nice
the task
ones,
force
yeah.
had them also.
Yeah, yeah.
So I pilfered one from one of the task force units, and I had it in the car, and we used it in
worked?
Staten Island.
It worked pretty
of
well?
all places. It worked great.
Was it fun?
Yeah, no, it was good.
You get
Yeah.
back in the car, you're kidding, right? Like, you see a guy's face where he's crying like a bitch. So you know what? Also, you know what? Now with the
Yeah.
pepper spray, you watch the demonstrations in China. And they use the umbrellas.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, man, we got to come up with something better. So I know this might sound weird to you, but I was thinking we should blow pot smoke out and like billow it. No, you know why? Because what happens is at some point they're gonna get them, like 20 minutes later they'll get the munchies.
Yeah.
And then the whole crowd is gonna disperse.
Yeah.
The whole crowd will disperse and they'll go about their way. Plus they're gonna be docile. They're gonna be in a better mood. They'll stop fighting. But most of all, they'll go home to get something to eat. Go back to their neighborhood.
So there's a spot for you in the Office of Management Analysis and Planning.
Hey, listen, man. I'm an ideas guy. I'm an ideas guy. What can I tell you? So, so you're doing this. You came up with this great plan, and it was really, really effective. I remember the World Cup soccer. They were playing in L.A. Colombia versus Ecuador, Roosevelt Avenue in Queens. Prior to actually having body cams or anybody having a phone on a camera, man, there was there had to be 100,000 people underneath that train station.
I've asked you 1,000,000 times not to exaggerate.
And we got rid of those people one by one, man.
The Queens Marines with the task force.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
So
all you heard was, ouch, ooh, oh, oficial, no, ouch, ooh, oficial.
And if you remember, we had those special units set up in every borough because in different areas of the city, there'd be different teams that had some kind of an affiliation with neighborhoods.
Yeah.
So in Manhattan, it was the Brazilians on 46th Street.
Yeah.
In upper Manhattan, it might have been the Dominicans or the Cubans. So we had people stationed throughout the city just ready to respond and handle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was for events that weren't even occurring in the city. Just that we were planning ahead to, we knew we'd have issues.
So all this training that you enacted, are you a little bit perturbed that it hasn't been followed through with now in current times?
I certainly hope, that they should.
But they don't seem like they're using it.
We proved that it works. We've had instances, during the 90s that didn't spiral out of control because of this. We shut down demonstrations. We handled them beautifully, made arrests, got, the bad guys off the street, and allowed, the good, law-abiding people in the city to
Well, Jane Fonda's been arrested 5 times in the last 2 weeks.
Jane Fonda?
Yeah, for the climate control protesting. Her and Ted Danson, but she's got arrested like 5 times.
So she's in and out.
Yeah, let her go through the system and she'll
imagine
slow
her back
down
in
on
the day,
that,
Back in the day when we were in control, right? What would happen to her?
She would have freaked out when she saw the feet that said "mope" in central booking. She would have said, "What does that mean, mope?"
So let me ask you a question. Now we had that's legendary what you did with the disorder control, but then you didn't stop there. You went a step further because somewhere you started coming up with, I would imagine, an idea, you and Jack Maple, about putting together a meeting that would happen. Was it a monthly meeting called Compstat?
No, it was twice weekly. It was Compstat. It was Jack Maple's idea. Let's get that clear.
But you're
Jack
considered one of the
Maple's
architects as
idea.
well.
Yeah, well, I helped him implement it. I was an implementer.
Tell us about what that little...
Jack was the idea man, kind of like you, Mark.
I'm the dumb. Don't follow any of my ideas. We locked up. So tell me a little bit about that process, because prior to Compstat, like for the average person who doesn't know what Compstat is, it's a meeting. Nowadays, it takes place. Was it every week now, or it's once a month?
Once a month, maybe.
And the bosses, the captains from every precinct, or the deputy inspectors or the inspectors from each command, they have to, if they're having a spike in crime, they have to step up to a podium. If their precinct called, and they have to basically talk to the chiefs of the department and explain to them why there's a spike in crime in their precinct and what they're doing about it. And as these meetings went on further, a lot of times, a lot of these people that we're talking about, they're not actors, they're not public speakers, and now all of a sudden you get them in front of a group of their peers. They're nervous. They might not have all the answers, and they got a reputation of you're going to get beat up on that day.
Yeah. So here's the philosophy behind it.
Okay.
All right. So you've described the Compstat meeting, accurately. At the time, if you remember, this was now 1994. Violent crime was near its height, and the mayor, Giuliani, and the police commissioner, Bratton, had decided we were going to change all that. So we, Jack, myself, John Timoney, set about to create a sense of urgency in the department about violent crime. So that this meeting became like a glorified sales meeting, a hardcore sales meeting.
The model was sort of taken from the private sector, right?
It was.
Yeah.
This was Jack's idea, but he got the thought really watching Glengarry Glen Ross, the movie.
Wow.
He says, that's what we need. We got to ask hard questions. We got to hold people accountable.
Always be
closing.
Yeah.
If you're a detective,
Prepared.
Always be prepared. But ask questions of precinct commanders or precinct detective commanders or narcotics squad commanders about their area of responsibility and what were they contributing to lower the violent crime in that neighborhood.
Holding the bosses accountable for
Executives,
what the subordinates are doing. They're what the cops are doing, what the detectives are doing, holding them kind of responsible. They're going to have to crack the whip.
Well, that's one way, right? Mm-hmm. The other way is to help the cops, help the detectives, give them a plan,
resources
that works.
Working together.
It might be unmarked cars in one place. It might be just the fact that the boss has got to get out on the street and see for him or herself what's needed, and then provide it. Leadership.
Well, one of the things
out in the street.
Chief, one of the things it did too is it got everyone in the game.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I didn't like presenting at Compstat.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd have to be a sadist to like that, But it did make you get up on your game, and it also made your detectives. If I was getting the shit kicked out of me, guess what? You're going to get the shit kicked out of you too, because I got to explain your work.
Yeah,
and if your work is below par, it makes me look like a fool.
So this is the idea was to raise the bar, not only for patrol, not only for housing, not only for transit, not only for narcotics, but for precinct detectives and specialty units. Why can't we do better? Shouldn't we
making
do
them play better, making them play harder, just like a coach.
And morale improved.
Absolutely.
Morale was terrific. And the mayor wasn't even given raises then.
I know.
Zeros for heroes.
Zero,
and we
three.
still did more work.
And we got him in.
Yeah.
We got him in on our backs.
But they did start giving grade more often from Compstat, because I remember years ago, detectives could be in a RIP unit for 5 or 6 years and still not get their shield.
Yeah, exactly.
And then when I went to the 2-3 squad, no one had grade. The whole squad. This was like a superstar squad.
Yeah.
Then they started getting grade, and that was a good thing.
So that was that was a decision that the commissioner could do. Mm-hmm. Give more grade money for sergeants, for lieutenants, and for detectives. Increase those.
That helped morale
ranks.
A lot,
because the mayor wasn't budging on his
the raise.
I'm interested in finding out what the atmosphere was, especially around the first Compstat meeting, because none of the bosses they had no idea what they were stepping in for. Right? Nothing like that had ever been done in the department.
That's absolutely true. So I'm a precinct commander 3 times over: the 2-0, the 3-2, and the 3-4 precincts. And I can honestly tell you, I've repeated this many, many times. Nobody ever asked me, above my rank, hey, how's your crime, Louis? Mm-hmm. What's doing in the 2-0? What's doing in the 3-2? What's doing in the 3? They were not interested. It wasn't on their radar.
Right.
So this is during the Zero for Heroes was Giuliani. Rudy Giuliani was the mayor
Rudy
at the time.
Giuliani was the mayor. Yeah.
Okay, so now you're sitting there with Jack Maple and Timoney, and you're coming up with this plan. And tell us a little bit about the first one when everybody's coming together. It's almost like a meeting with the 5 families, but all the soldiers are coming too. You know what I'm saying? Think about it. And hey, what the hell?
There's no food on the table.
Yeah. So everybody's coming to 1PP. It must have been like this weirdest thing. Like, why are we here? What are we doing?
So they were all told, and we did this by geographical sections of the city. So Manhattan North, everything north of 59th Street came down for the first meeting. And we didn't have the computers. We didn't have the statistical quick turnaround that we have, that we got later on. So each precinct commander brought down an easel. And on the easel, he had a map of his or her precinct and overlays, acetate overlays with little dots indicating robberies, burglaries, shootings, homicides, rapes, assaults. And as we went through, we asked them to flip the acetate. Let's see the next one and the next one. And invariably in some of the precincts, and you guys are going to know where they are, where you had a large concentration of street sales of drugs, you also had everything else happening. So it looked to us that we had hot spots in just about every precinct in Manhattan North. And, it was a visual representation of what's going on. Now we're asking them, do something about it. And they were shocked.
This thing that you
They
talked
were
about
absolutely
with
shocked.
the pages, and
Yeah.
that was something that you guys created in 1PP for every, like Manhattan North, or they had to bring their own?
All right, so each precinct brought their own, right? But before we got to that point, Jack had the great idea. He says, you know what they're going to say? I says, no, what? Oh, it's too much work. It's too hard, So what we did in the office, I had 2 sergeants. Every day, they would take the busiest precinct in the city, the 7-5 at the time, and they would plot every one of those violent crimes, the major 7 crimes, on the map. And it took 20 minutes. So that when we kind of pulled the rug out
So
from
you
under.
took their excuse from them before
right
they
out.
got
Hey,
there.
my guys did it, 20 minutes a day. Come on.
Well, it's a
And
pin
the
map.
2-0 precinct didn't have those kind
No,
of numbers.
absolutely
It's a
not.
pin map, and all you got to do is look at the complaint reports, and you can just.
There
put
you go. There you
You know,
go.
what
Where
percentage?
there's a will,
There's a way.
there's
What
a way.
percentage of crime also went down just from better report taking? I remember people come in and go, I got robbed. Oh, okay. The PAA would take
Yeah.
the report. And it was like, they didn't get robbed. There's a reason they made that report.
Yeah.
The methadonians, they would, oh, my methadone was taken. We like, sit it down with that guy for an hour. We're not taking a report for this, Or they do a spit back in the street,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
For our listeners, a spit back is they pretend to take it, they spit it into a bottle, and they sell it on the
They sell
street.
it.
Isn't that beautiful?
Here's an interesting thing that happens after the Compstat, the meetings start taking off.
Yeah.
So what happens now is you got the commanders, the precinct commanders, including the squads, and if they get called to the carpet, which is what we used to call it,
Yeah.
they're going. They got notified. They're going to. They're going to have to go to Compstat, and they start preparing, but on the other end. So while you guys in 1PP were organizing and
Their
a lot of
attack
times,
plan.
a lot of attack plan, a lot of at some point. Let me ask you, what point did it become like a hit squad? Like before, like it didn't start off that way.
No,
because
it
some
didn't.
people felt like they were targeted at the
Right.
meetings.
All right, so maybe some were,
Uh-huh.
but for good cause, in my eyes. If I targeted someone, there was a reason. And you were never
Revenge is a
targeted.
dish best
Yeah,
served
cold.
cold.
You were never targeted for your first meeting. So, when you get the idea of it, you were there once a month.
Uh-huh.
But for us, we would meet twice a week so that in those 4 weeks, we saw the entire city. And then I'd see you again next month. Now, at that next meeting, if you hadn't committed or
Corrected
Address
your
the
situation.
situation.
Yeah.
addressed the situation that we talked about last time, I'm coming for you. It's all about creating that sense of urgency. And although I'm talking to one commander or one narcotic commander or one detective commander, his and her peers are in the room listening. And they know they've got the same issues, the same problems. If someone comes up with a great solution, everyone in the room hears it.
That's
hey, I can benefit from that. And there were people who, we came for people. People lost their commands. But there were people who got promoted as a result of their work.
Did you ever catch people lying to you during Compstat?
Yes. That's another thing. 4.5 years.
We tell the truth here.
4.5 years, and it never stopped.
Uh-huh.
It never
You mean the
stopped.
lying?
Yeah. The lying, the fudging the numbers. From beginning to end, we always had someone or some group of people
But
looking
Chief,
to
you
game
have
the
to
system.
admit, there was a lot of tension in that room.
Yeah.
And very
Tension
tough.
is good. Tension is good.
Except if you're the one up at that mic.
Yeah.
What did you
Tough.
do to anybody? Did you ever catch people lying to you on more than one occasion?
I don't think so, because I think after the first lie, they either got the message or they were gone.
The reason why I asked that is because I read a thing about there was a precinct commander and he was doing a spiel at the podium, and behind him there was Tell us.
Oh, the Pinocchio.
That wasn't a precinct commander.
Is it?
That was a borough commander.
Oh, okay. What happened? Tell us the story.
So the borough commander got up at the podium to more or less defend his performance in the borough. They weren't doing well. Violent crime was up. They weren't catching anybody. And as he started to give us this flowery description of everything he did, behind him on the screen, rather than the map being available for everyone to see, was his picture of Pinocchio. And Pinocchio's nose grew longer and longer the more this guy talked. So that was the story.
He didn't like that, though, right?
No, he didn't like it. There was a civilian in the room who was writing a book on policing. He went upstairs. He told the police commissioner what he saw down there. He was going to add that to the book. The author was George Kelling. He since died.
He wrote the broken windows
Yeah,
policy, right?
yeah.
Theory, yeah.
So shortly after that, Jack Maple and myself were in Bratton's office getting dressed down. He was not happy with our, with our little joke. Plus, I humiliated this guy in front of his subordinates. It was a stupid, stupid idea.
It's an interesting thing because you have, well, when you become a cop, for example, you get this little bit of machismo. Yeah. And then as you move up to the ranks, not only are you a cop now, but you're a boss in charge of cops. And then the further you go up, now you're a boss in charge of bosses. So you get your ego. You have a certain ego about you. And now, there's bosses still on top of you. And now you have to go into a room full of your peers and get dressed down. And when I say dressed down, it's almost like you were standing up there naked after you got slapped around a little bit. And then you had to go find your chair again and hope that the next guy gets it worse, because otherwise everybody's going to remember you.
Mark, come on. These guys got to get tough. They're getting paid to fight crime. This is their job. This is their reason for being there in the department. For me to ask a question about a location in your precinct where you've had a series of violent crimes, and for a commander not to know,
right? That's
not to have any idea.
I used to work up for Pulaski at the end. I used to work directly. I was
Chief of Detectives.
Yeah, I was in the training unit. And then we used to have to go sit in on the meetings on the Compstat. So that's why I was pretty familiar with the format and how it went down. We used to have to take notes. But I noticed afterwards, and then regardless of who got dressed down in Compstat, afterwards, when the meeting broke up and you're in that hallway there in 1PP and they got the donuts and the coffee there was a lot of attaboys, man. It was like it was like a bar fight almost. Like old school bar fight where you went back in the bar afterwards and you had a drink with the person.
Yeah.
So that's what I admired, that aspect of it. Don't take it personal, man. It's
job. Business. It's not personal. This is business. Right. This is the family business, Mark.
Do it better. Do it better. Work harder.
Work harder. Or maybe you should, come in there and startle me with a success story. And that happened. And it gave me, as the chief sitting at the other end of the room, a chance to have a conversation with bright sergeants.
Did that ever happen?
Bright lieutenants.
Did you ever come in there and you're going to rip this freaking commander apart because look at this crap. And then all of a sudden, the commander comes out and actually lays something out and you're like, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah. It's happened.
Right.
Not often, but I mean, it happened. Usually it was just that you heard great stories from them and they're highlighting the work of maybe their RIP team, maybe their anti-crime team, maybe their conditions team, or a unique solution to one of the street shootings. You have to give them an attaboy.
Absolutely.
It can't only be negative. It's got to be, you got to give them that.
I had a great
feedback.
Compstat story one time. Norris's assistant called during the day to Lieutenant Caniglia, said, I want to know about these cases. He goes, I'm too busy. And he blew him off. Yeah. He calls me. I come on the 4 to 12, and he was, I go, I'm too busy. So Cutter, who was our boss when we went to Compstat, he goes, you guys are fucking dead. Yeah. He goes, Norris wants to destroy both of you guys for blowing off his assistant. Yeah. So Cutter said, well, you can do that, but they solved 2 murders and 6 shootings this Compstat period. So Norris actually backed off. He goes, you tell them never to hang up on my guy again.
Well, it brings up an interesting point, just because I know you were on the other end. You're the chief. You were in charge of all this stuff. But when you were in a squad, I was in the squad. I remember the call used to come over, and everybody knew we were going to have Compstat. The question was whether your command was going to get called to Compstat.
Exactly.
Now you get called, and all of a sudden you get a list of the cases that they're pulling from the squad. So now, at the time, you got to like double and triple, make 4, 5, 6 different folders of this case.
Was horrible.
While the boss is sitting there reading your case, telling you, did you do this? Did you do that? Well, you better go out and do it. And you could backfill your cases until they came out with the DD5 system, which was now instead of typing our reports out, we had to put it in the computer. So you couldn't backfill anymore because it was already there for everybody to see.
Yeah.
So if this is post you.
Yes, it is.
So you're
post
just
me.
hearing that fire exists.
Yeah, man. Once they went to that DD5 system, man, the cat was out of the bag. You couldn't backfill anymore. You had to update your case when it said 3
And that was
days.
under Chief Pulaski, right?
Yeah.
But the DD5 system also allowed to do something that you always talked about. If there was a murderer working across boroughs, you could run it.
Yeah.
The computer run an MO and say, look, the 7.5 has this guy,
Same
or
thing.
the 4.8, which was great. Where back in the day, we used to have to rely on word of mouth.
Yeah.
Right?
So that's
it's a
a
beautiful
whole
thing.
I did. Compstat was brilliant. I mean, it really was. It was something that was really, really necessary for the department, and although. And it was good for the cops too, in the
How about for the communities?
Yeah.
community.
Huh?
But
How about the violent crime, the lives that were saved?
When you saw your freaking commander coming back, and he got smacked around at Compstat, you were
man.
happy.
He didn't look good. He didn't look happy. He had a bad weekend.
Man, you could tell.
Went home and beat his
between
dog.
legs. He just went. He went back to put his sleeves on and went home that day.
When you went to I think I forgot the statistic, but I think at one time 80-something% of all police departments in the nation were using some form of Compstat.
Or
now.
something that they called
Called
Compstat.
That's
Compstat.
impressive.
And you
That
know
is
what they
impressive.
say about, imitation being the highest form of
Absolutely.
flattery, right?
You guys should have patented that. You'd
Yeah.
have been a multimillionaire now. You
Well,
wouldn't be here talking to us.
I'll tell you. So Jack, when he left the department, he started consulting. And he did very well in New Orleans, in Atlanta, just changing the dynamics down there with Compstat. And then he ended up with the TV show,
Right.
The District.
Yes, absolutely.
And that was his
didn't-
legacy.
How come it
to
didn't
his
work in
kids.
Chicago, though?
I don't know that it didn't work. I don't know what they were doing, really.
Yeah.
I mean, we had...
Gary McCarthy
Gary
was
McCarthy
there,
was there. He should have known, the
You do
the
consulting work
business.
too now, right?
Yeah. Oh,
I'm checking over here. Look, it says you've been to Mexico, so you've been to other
Mexico,
countries. Boston, Cincinnati, you did consulting. New Orleans, LAPD.
Yeah.
That's great. Baltimore.
Yeah.
What happened in Baltimore?
Ooh, Eddie Norris was
That's
the police commissioner.
You can't win them all, huh, Louis?
Yeah. So here's the story, a quick Baltimore story. I met the mayor down there at the time. So it was Martin O'Malley. Later on, he became
Fine
the governor
Irishman.
of Maryland, right? So he's the mayor. Eddie Norris is the police commissioner. And now I guess Eddie got in trouble, and the mayor calls a friend who calls me to say he wants the name of can you recommend a guy? Can you recommend a black policeman to become the commissioner?
From his department.
For
Baltimore.
Baltimore.
Oh, okay.
I said, yeah, I know a great guy, works for us up in the Bronx. He's a full inspector.
Wow.
He's had a couple of, hot commands.
That's nice of you.
And he went down, he was sworn in as the police
That's
commissioner.
awesome.
A year and a half later, they kicked him out for a domestic violence gig, and the mayor won't speak to me, won't take my calls anymore. Can you imagine this, Mark?
Oh, my God.
Blamed it on me.
You tried to do the
They
right
blamed
thing.
it on me.
Oh, my God. That's
Those
funny.
things don't come with a guarantee.
No.
No
Now
money
this
back
could-
guarantee.
Expired,
Hey, what is this consulting work, dude? It's a big interest right now because all the stories with Joe Biden's son and being
Yeah.
over there sitting on a board and consulting about gas, and he knows nothing
I
about
wasn't
gas.
in the Ukraine.
No.
I know nothing about the Ukraine. It's not even a place I would visit.
So you go there and basically you give the learn about the department, then you give them ideas and
Yeah.
kind of come up with a attack plan for them
So-
to get better?
So Jack Maple had the best description of what it is we do when we go to these police departments. We are the great suggester. So you suggest a solution. You suggest changes. And then it's up to, the chief or the mayor,
If
whoever
they
hired
implement
you,
them, yeah.
to implement them.
And I noticed that a lot of these jobs, they last a year. Is that what it is? You get hired for a year? Or
Less than that.
Yeah.
It occurred in this year, but it's 3 months, 4 months, 2 months. Some cases.
Chief, all of this whole thing was basically based on the broken windows theory.
Yeah.
Which is to concentrate on the lower crimes, and they will have an effect on the overall crime situation. How come we're getting away from that now?
That's a political decision, right?
Yeah.
That's a policy decision that's driven from the mayor, the mayor's office, and they're telling, the cops today, here's what to do, here's what not to do. We don't want this, we don't want that. We don't want too many minorities in jail. We want everybody out on the streets. I think there was something in today's paper, I thought I read, they're going to start giving them tickets to the Met games if they make their court dates on time.
Oh, my God.
They're going to give them tickets to the Met game, not the Yankees, the Mets. So what does that say about my New York Mets?
We got to fill those seats somehow.
The carrot and the stick, right? You're good, we give you a carrot. It's a Met game, right?
Oh, God.
Yeah, they used to give out tickets to the Yankee game when they called them. Remember that Warren scam? You won tickets to the Yankee. You come over here and pick them up, and then they come, and they're like, "Oh, yeah, I got a warrant for your arrest. Go sit in that room."
That was probably invented in Compstat.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
beautiful.
sure it was. That's a good example of an idea. Somebody ran
Creativity.
with it.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, man, it's a remarkable thing, man. So many going the path that you went on the job and to rise to that. It's like you're a Hall of Famer.
Hall of Fame. I like that.
Yeah, you're a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
You were up there with
I'd
the.
say that. The only thing is Esposito beat the amount of time
yeah.
in rank.
You know what?
Right?
He's
We're
got
almost
me by 3 times. He's got like
we're
12
almost
years
approaching
there.
the hour here, but before we go into the second
Yeah.
hour and then take our break and go into the second hour, I wanted to ask you a question. There was a time there when Giuliani was mayor, and then he was given the opportunity to pick a new police commissioner. And instead of going with the obvious choice, which was Timoney at the time,
Right.
he chose to go outside and pick Howard Safer. I mean, you were right there, man. You were right in the middle of all that. What was the feeling like? Why did that happen?
Why that happened? So the mayor was the right guy for New York City, right? During the 90s. I believe that in my heart. He was the guy we needed. This didn't happen under Dinkins. It wouldn't have happened under anyone else, I don't think. But he wanted to surround himself with yes men.
They all do.
And Howard Safer proved himself as the fire commissioner to being a yes man. And this was just what he wanted. He didn't want any police professionals running or calling the shots.
Button heads with somebody who knows a little bit more than he does about what they're talking about.
He wanted what he wanted, and he got it. He got Howard.
But that ruffled a lot of feathers, I would imagine.
Well,
we started
Timothy
talking
called him a
about morale.
lightweight.
Yeah.
Timothy called
We
him a
talked about
lightweight.
morale.
Yeah.
We talked about motivating the men and stuff like that. If you worked so hard the way you guys did, and Timoney was like right in the head guy there of this triangle. He was the guy up in line, and then it's almost like when Della Croce doesn't get the button. You know what I'm saying? He doesn't, remember in Gotti?
That's right.
Remember in Gotti when they put Paul Castellano in instead of Della Croce?
Yeah.
The big mistake, man. See what you did? So you think, but who knows? You think the police commissioner actually has that much? Because right now we have Police Commissioner O'Neill, and we had the incident with Eric Garner and Pantaleo, and we talked about morale again, and losing some of it, and feeling defeated. We got so many suicides on the job now. So a lot of this, you wonder to yourself, how much does the police commissioner really have that much say in what he's got to go through? The mayor tells him what to do. Is that what happens?
Well, I mean, take a look at Bloomberg. 12 years the mayor.
Mm-hmm.
He let Ray Kelly run the department the way Ray Kelly wanted to. Giuliani had us over there once a week for our own little Compstat at City Hall. We'd have to brief him on the, whatever events occurred, on the crime, how we were doing, et cetera, anything that hit the papers. So he kept us, Bloomberg, I think, had a different approach.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy now, this de Blasio, is, another kind of an approach.
That's it.
Anti-police.
Yes.
That's an interesting. We're going to talk about that in the second half. But man, this first half, this is the fastest hour
This
I
is
think we've done.
unbelievable.
No, come on. Really?
Yeah, an hour's up.
Really? It's an hour already.
Yeah.
We didn't even touch upon this.
No, I didn't get started yet.
Yeah.
no,
Well,
I know.
we're going to let you loose on the second half.
You can bust out in the second part.
Yes.
This is what we do. We take a break. I'm going to have some of that, a couple of grapes and cheese over there.
Yeah.
Refresh my tea. I still got the tea, man.
Somebody promised me coffee would be served.
We're going to
here.
get you some coffee, too. Well, this was what a way to kick it and knock it
Unbelievable.
out, right? Started off, man. Here in Tribeca, our new home for police off the cuff. And we couldn't ask for a finer...
Inside Blue 360, you forgot to mention
Inside
that.
Blue 360, we couldn't ask for a finer first guest. Thank you for your time, and we'll be back for the second half.